My husband spent years putting his hands on me. The night I locked him out, those same hands went through a window, and he cried like a baby on my porch. The first time Dex hit me, we had been married for 3 months. We were arguing about something I can't even remember now, and he grabbed my arm so hard he left a bruise that wrapped around my wrist like a bracelet. When I pulled away, he slapped me across the face with the back of his hand, and I hit the wall behind me. He stood there for a second, and then he started apologizing. He said he didn't mean it. He said he'd never do it again. He said something came over him and he couldn't control it. I stood against that wall holding my face, and I believed him because I was 24 years old, and I had never been hit by anyone in my life. And I didn't know yet that the first time is never the last time. The second time was about 2 months later. I burned dinner, and he grabbed the pot off the stove and threw it at the wall next to my head. The sauce splattered across the side of my face and the wall and the floor, and he told me I was useless and couldn't even do the one thing he asked me to do. I cleaned the wall and the floor, and I made something else for dinner, and I didn't say a word. The third time he punched me in the stomach because I came home late from the grocery store and he thought I was somewhere else. I doubled over on the kitchen floor, and he stepped over me and sat on the couch and turned on the television. That was when I stopped counting. After that, it all blurred together. A shove here, a slap there, a punch when he was really angry, a grab when he was just annoyed. He pulled my hair once so hard a chunk came out in his hand, and he looked at it and dropped it on the floor like it was lint. He kicked me in the leg while I was making the bed because I wasn't doing it fast enough. He threw a glass at my back while I was walking away from an argument, and it shattered between my shoulders. Then one Tuesday night, something broke inside me, and it wasn't a bone. Dex came home from work in a bad mood, and I was in the kitchen heating up leftovers. He looked at the food and said, "I'm not eating that." I said, "It's what we have." He shoved the plate off the counter, and it shattered on the floor, and he looked at me and said, "Clean it up." I stood there looking at the broken plate and the food on the tile, and something shifted. Not anger, something deeper than anger. Something that had been building for 4 years behind every bruise and every lie, and every night I spent staring at the ceiling wondering if I would make it to morning. I looked at him and said no. He blinked. I said, "No, I'm not cleaning that up." He stepped toward me and I stepped back, and I said, "If you touch me, I will walk out that door and I will never come back." He stopped. Not because he was scared of me, but because he was surprised. In 4 years, I had never said no. I had never refused. I had never done anything but absorb whatever he gave me and keep going. That night, he went to the bedroom and slammed the door, and I slept on the couch. The next morning, he left for work without saying a word. The second that door closed, I moved. I called my sister and told her everything. She was at my house within an hour. We changed the locks on the front door and the back door. My sister called a locksmith she knew, and he came over and had them done in less than 2 hours. I packed a bag for Dex with enough clothes for a week, and I put it on the front porch. I put his wallet and his keys and his charger in a separate bag next to it. I closed every window and locked every latch, and when my sister asked if I was okay, I said I will be. Dex came home at 6:15 like he always did. I heard his truck pull into the driveway. I heard the door slam. I heard his boots on the porch steps. Then I heard the key go into the lock and stop. He tried it again and again. He knocked on the door. Not a normal knock. A fist pound that shook the frame. He yelled my name. He said, "Open the door." He said, "This is my house." I stood on the other side of the door and said, "Your bags are on the porch." He said, "Open this door right now." I said no. He kicked the door once, then twice. The frame held. My sister was standing behind me with her phone in her hand, ready to call for help if it went further. Dex went quiet for a second, and I could hear him breathing hard on the other side. Then he walked across the porch. I heard his boots moving toward the front window, the big one next to the door. The one I used to sit by and read when he was at work because it let in the best light. He hit it with his fist. He hit my window with the same fist he had been hitting me with for 4 years. The glass held for the first punch. It cracked on the second. On the third, it shattered inward, and Dex's arm went straight through it up to his elbow. The sound was something I will never forget. A crack, and then a crash, and then a scream. Not my scream, his. He pulled his arm back through the broken glass, and the window caught him on both sides. I could see him through the jagged hole, and his arm was cut open from his wrist to just below his elbow. There was blood everywhere. On the porch, on the glass, on his shirt. He stumbled backward, holding his arm against his chest, and he was crying. My sister called for help before I could think about whether to. I heard her on the phone behind me giving the address and saying there was a man on the front porch who had put his arm through a window and was bleeding significantly. The dispatcher asked if he was inside the house. She said no. They said they were sending someone. I stood at the door and watched Dex through the broken window. He had sat down on the porch steps with his injured arm held against his chest. He was rocking slightly. The crying had shifted into something quieter, a low kind of sound I had never heard from him before. In 4 years, I had seen him angry and cold and contemptuous and eerily calm and vicious in ways that looked like nothing from the outside, but I had never seen him like this. Small and out of control of his own body, and unable to manage what was happening. The window had done to him in 3 punches, what he had not been able to imagine happening to him in 4 years of doing it to me. I don't know what I expected to feel watching him. I had thought about leaving for a long time before that night, and I had imagined versions of what it would look like when I finally did, and none of them had looked like this. None of them had involved a broken window and blood on the porch boards and my husband crying like something small and hurt. What I felt was not satisfaction. It wasn't relief exactly. It was something closer to witnessing. A quiet, steady attention, like like being asked to look at something carefully, and I was doing it. The paramedics arrived first, then a police cruiser a few minutes behind them. The paramedics got to Dex on the porch, and one of them started working on his arm immediately. The other one looked at the broken window and then at me through the glass and asked if everyone inside was okay. I said yes. She asked if I would come to the door. I looked at my sister and she nodded, and I unlocked the door and opened it. The officer who came to talk to me was a woman, which I don't know if it mattered or if I just remember it, because it did. She asked me what happened, and I told her about the night, the key and the knocking and the kick door and the window. She wrote it down. Then she asked if there was anything else she should know about. I stood in the doorway of the house where I had lived for 4 years, and I looked at her and I said yes. I said there is a lot else you should know about. I told her about 4 years of what Dex had done to me. I stood in that doorway and I named things. The first time and the bruise shaped like a bracelet, the pot thrown against the wall, the kitchen floor after the punch and him stepping over me. All of it that came after. The hair, the glass at my back, the years of smaller things that didn't leave visible marks, but left other kinds of marks. I said it in an even voice because I had gone somewhere very calm inside, further in than I had been able to go in years, and I was able to speak from there without shaking. The officer listened to everything. She asked me several times if I needed medical attention, and I said no. She asked if I had documentation of any of it, and I said some. Photographs on my phone and urgent care records from once. She said to gather whatever I had. She said it would be relevant. Outside on the porch, the paramedics were wrapping Dex's arm before transport. I could hear him through the broken window. He had stopped crying by then. He was giving them his information, name and date of birth and insurance, in the flat mechanical voice of a person running on adrenaline. That voice I recognized. I had used it myself many times over the previous 4 years. The flat voice that comes out when you are somewhere past feeling, and your body is just answering questions to get through the next thing. Except I had used it after he hurt me. He was using it because of a window he had put his own fist through. I stood in my doorway and watched the ambulance take him away, and I felt the calm stay steady, and I was grateful for it. Dex was transported to the hospital. The cut ran from his wrist to several inches below his elbow, and it required surgery to repair 2 tendons. I know this because his mother called me 3 days later and told me in a voice that made clear she considered me responsible for the window. She said Dex was going to need weeks of recovery and physical therapy, and that I needed to understand what I had done. I said I hadn't put his arm through it. She said I had provoked the situation. I said I had changed my locks and asked him to leave. She said I knew how Dex got when he was upset, and I should have been more careful. I stood in my sister's kitchen and I listened to his mother say that to me, and I thought about 4 years of being careful and what being careful had looked like and what it had cost, and I said I was done being careful about how Dex got. She said she hoped I was proud of what I had done to her son. I said what I had done to her son was change a lock. She hung up. She has not called since. I had stayed at my sister's house for the 3 days following the window. I had not slept well. Not because I was scared of Dex finding me. The police had made it clear he would not be coming near the house for the foreseeable future, but because something large was moving through me that I didn't have a name for yet, and it kept me awake at night lying in my sister's guest room staring at the ceiling. I had stared at so many ceilings in my marriage. I knew how to stare at a ceiling and get through the night. This was different. This ceiling was safe. No one on the other side of any wall was going to come through the door at 3 in the morning. I kept having to remind myself of that, and it kept not quite landing all the way, which I understood later was not a sign that something was wrong with me, but a sign that 4 years had rewired certain responses, and rewiring takes time. My sister did not push me to talk about it. She fed me and gave me her guest room and asked each morning what I needed, and did not ask about Dex. What I needed for those 3 days was mostly to sit somewhere safe without having to manage anyone's mood, and she understood that without me saying it. She had known something was wrong for years. She told me later she had been waiting for me to call, and that every time her phone rang, she had prepared herself for the call being about something worse than what it was. I said I was sorry for that. She said, "Don't be sorry." She said she was just glad I called. She also told me that the morning I had called her, when I told her everything, she had cried in her car before she drove to my house. She had cried for 10 minutes, and then she had wiped her face and driven over. She had not cried in front of me that day because she knew that was not what I needed. She had needed to be useful, and she was. I think about that sometimes, the 10 minutes in her car, what it must have felt like to hear all of it coming out at once when you had suspected for years but had not known the full shape of it. She carried that too. She carried it quietly, and then she came and changed the locks with me. I went back to the house after 3 days. My sister came with me, and we swept up the glass, and she held the dustpan while I swept, and neither of us said anything for a while. We boarded the front window with plywood until I could have it replaced. I stood in the kitchen while we worked and looked at the room where so much had happened, and I thought about what it was going to take to make it a room I could stand in without that particular weight. I didn't know yet. I was not sure the house was where I would stay, but I was there, and the door locked behind me, and I had the only key, and those 2 facts felt significant enough to build on for the moment. I filed for a protective order the following week. My attorney, a woman named Carol, who I found through a domestic violence legal services organization my sister had located, walked me through the process and told me what to bring. I brought the photographs, 11 of them taken over 4 years on my phone with dates and times attached, and the urgent care records from the night I told them I walked into a cabinet, and a handwritten account I had prepared the night before sitting at my sister's table, writing down everything I could remember in the order I could remember. It took 3 hours to write. I had started it twice and stopped and started again. The first attempt went too fast and left things out. The second attempt I went too slow and got stuck on one specific night and couldn't move past it. The third time time I wrote it the way Carol had told me to, just the facts in sequence, what happened and when, and I got through it without stopping. I cried once when I was writing, and then I stopped and kept going. I looked at it when I was done, and there it was, 4 years in plain language, and it was the first time I had ever written it down or said it all at once to anyone, and I sat there at my sister's kitchen table for a while before I could fold it and put it away. Carol read through everything at our first meeting and did not express surprise at any of it, and did not look at me with pity, which was what I had been most afraid of. She said I had more documentation than most people she worked with. She said the photographs alone were significant. The order was granted within the week. Dex could not come within 500 feet of me, the house, my workplace, or my sister's address. I was handed a copy by a clerk at the courthouse, and I stood in the parking lot afterward and looked at the paper with my name on it and Dex's name on it, and I folded it and put it in my bag and walked to my car. I sat in the car for a while. I didn't cry. I just sat there with my hands in my lap and let myself breathe in a parking lot with no one in the car but me. Dex contested the divorce. He hired an attorney, and the attorney sent letters, and there were several months of back and forth during which Dex's position, communicated through his attorney, was that I had manufactured or exaggerated the abuse, that the window incident had been an accident caused by extreme emotional distress I had provoked, and that he was owed a fair division of marital assets. Carol communicated back on my behalf, and the photographs were entered into the proceedings, and the urgent care records were entered, and my written account was entered. Dex's attorney stopped sending letters about the fabrication after that. The divorce was finalized 10 months after the night of the window. I kept the house. Dex received a portion of the savings we had accumulated during the marriage, and that was the end of the legal portion of it. Carol told me the outcome was about as clean as these cases got. I said I'd had a lot of help. She said I should be proud of myself anyway. I want to talk about the 2 years before the Tuesday night. The 2 years when I knew I needed to leave and didn't. People ask about that sometimes. Not always in those words, but in the particular way some people have of framing questions about staying that implies the answer was obvious, and the staying is the mystery. I understand why people ask it. From the outside, it looks like a door that was always open. From the inside, it doesn't look like a door at all. I stayed because leaving required believing the leaving was survivable, not just physically. I had places to go, I had my sister, I had enough money to manage. I stayed because Dex had spent 4 years slowly and methodically disassembling my ability to trust my own judgment, and the voice in my head that said, "You can do this," had gotten very quiet, and the voice that said, "You won't survive it alone," had gotten very loud, and I had lived inside that imbalance for so long that I had stopped recognizing it as an imbalance. I thought it was just how things were. I thought the fear was accurate information about the world rather than something that had been installed in me one incident at a time by someone who needed me to be afraid. When your perception of a situation has been altered systematically over years, you cannot simply decide to perceive it differently. You have to find a foothold first, something that tells you your own read is worth trusting. For me, it was one Tuesday night and a plate on the floor and the word no. The Tuesday night when I said no to cleaning up the plate, something adjusted. Not all the way. Not in a single dramatic moment of clarity, but something that had been stripped and spinning found its thread again, and I felt it when it happened. It was quiet. It was not triumphant. It was just no, just that word. And the world did not end, and Dex blinked, and something I had lost over 4 years moved slightly back toward me. That is what I want people to understand who have never been inside it. Leaving is not a decision made from strength. It is a recovery that happens when something taken from you over a long time comes back enough to be usable again. I did not leave because I was brave. I left because for one moment I was more myself than I had been in 4 years, and I moved before that moment passed. I replaced the window in October. I had the dimensions measured and ordered an exact match, same size, same framing, and had it installed by a man who asked no questions about the plywood, and I offered no explanations. When it was in, I cleaned the frame and wiped down the glass and put the chair back where it had always been, facing out toward the front yard. I sat down in it in the afternoon light. The light came through the same way it always had. I had sat in that chair in that light for years, on the mornings when Dex was at work and the house was still and I could breathe without calculating anything, and I had thought about leaving in those mornings sometimes, and felt the fear of it, and looked back down at my book. The glass was new, but the light didn't know that. The light just came through. I sat in it for a long time. I have not spoken to Dex since the night of the window. He has not attempted contact. His mother has not called a second time. I think of him rarely now, and when I do, it is not with the particular dread that used to accompany his name, the sound of his truck in the driveway, the specific way his key used to fit the old lock. Those sounds used to move through me like a signal. They do not anymore. What is left when I think of him is not much. A man who could not manage himself, so he managed me instead, for 4 years, until one Tuesday night when I said no, and the next morning I moved, and then the night came when the door held and the window did not, and he sat on my porch steps and cried. He cried on my porch. He sat there with blood on his shirt, and he cried because his arm hurt, and because the door had not opened the way he had expected it to open, and because for the first time in 4 years something had not done what he wanted it to do. I watched him through the broken glass, and I did not feel sorry for him. I did not feel glad either. I felt clear. I felt something I would later recognize as the beginning of being okay. It took a long time after that to get to okay the rest of the way. Some days it still takes something, but the window is whole and the lock is mine and the light comes through in the afternoon just the way it always did. That is where I live now.